Welcome to Bunch Formation, your newest favorite college football show. I am Chris Vannini, and winners win. I'm a winner. We're going to win.
And I am David Ubben, and we need to start the show with an announcement. I don't really know how to say this, so I will just say it. I want to thank Pat Kraft and Penn State for their interest in me and their head coaching vacancy. But after careful consideration, talking it over with my family, I have elected to stay on at Bunch Formation. But I do respect Penn State. And again, best of wishes to them on the rest of their search. So that's out of the way.
You guys don't want to know what the buyout language is in David Ubben's new Bunch Formation contract, but we're not a public school. We're not releasing that publicly.
Try and FOIA it. You ain't going to get it.
We're giving them the resources. Welcome, everybody. Big show. Conference championships are here. Lots of coaches are being hired or not hired at certain places. There's some more college football playoff fallout, and we're going to get into all of that. David, the regular season is done. We're done with like the big Saturdays now, and it's all we're kind of in that awkward period now where my whole week has been just full of coaching news. That's the only thing I'm writing this week. Conference championship games don't even get into my head until later in the week. You got signing day happening on Wednesday. It's been a weird week. This is always kind of like that awkward middle period.
Yeah, the signing day thing is tough too. Like I woke up today and I was like, oh, it's signing day. Whereas like, for a long time you had your sort of plan and, it was like a thing in February, but now it's sort of an afterthought and people kind of pay attention to like Chris Henry Jr. and some flips, but it's a weird time because we're still kind of digesting that, the post Lane stuff, the coaching searches, all that stuff. So it is a little bit of a weird timing, but at least it's all kind of knocked out of the way now instead of like the portal would be starting Monday.
And
signing day in a couple weeks. Like at least you got a little bit of time to breathe.
I was actually talking to somebody about this earlier. I do like not having the full portal also happening right now because it does feel like things are a little bit calmer. Like throwing that on top of all this was a bit too much. Now, yes, guys are announcing they're entering the portal, but they're not taking visits and doing a lot of that stuff, not signing with schools, can't do a lot of that stuff right now. So coaching news, championship games, that's kind of the focus right now. That'll be the show. Wanted to open by thanking a bunch of people who've been sending us pictures of their Spotify Wrapped and how we are, in some cases, number 1 or top 10 or whatever, just on their most listened to podcast. And that means a lot because, we're a show that didn't start until like, April or May? I think.
May-ish. I don't know. No, it's probably, it was May or June because,
it was when we were in New York. We did the first episode together.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And it's, for a brand new podcast, David and I starting over from scratch, we had to completely build a new audience, and a good number of you have continued with us. And so we appreciate that. I don't listen to Spotify, so I don't get a Wrapped myself. I'm left out when everybody else has their kind of things.
What do you use?
I use Apple Podcasts for my podcasts.
Oh, okay. But do you use Spotify for like music?
No, I use Apple Music and a combination of just music that I myself have and download. I don't really have a subscription. I'm kind of weird. I'll download music and
Spotify Premium, but I have never actually used Apple Music, so there you go.
Yeah, well, if we are on yours, please send it to us either on Twitter, bunchformationp, or bunchformationpod at gmail.com. It's been really cool to see that. It means a lot to be getting that kind of support for a show that we just started this, in the middle of the spring.
Y'all are awesome.
Scheduling news. We probably won't be live Saturday night for After Dark. David will be at the ACC championship game at a game. I will be at the Big 12 championship game earlier in the day. I don't get home usually until like halfway through the night games.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll really be in a position to do that. We also will not be live on Sunday. We have too many things going on with the Athletic. We got to focus on there. So we will have a normal Monday show reacting to the playoff final results, bowl matchups, all that kind of stuff. As for this episode, Check out the show notes if you want to jump ahead to anything. We got timestamps in there. Send all your feedback again to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. Got a lot of emails I've started to go through. We have been swamped these last few weeks. So I was finally today able to go through the emails. We're going to answer a lot of your questions as well in the mailbag section of this pod. Wanted to kind of get out of the regular season and the deluge of games to kind of get to that. So please leave a 5-star review. We will read it on the show. We got a few of those. Appreciate that. Back up to a perfect 5-star rating, which we like to see. First review, Jefferson Zero, who says college football podcasts tend to fall into two categories: team-specific podcasts that provide one-sided fan agitprop.
I don't know what that word means. I've never seen that word in my life.
Or national podcast. You're a journalist, David. You went to Missouri.
I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
Or national podcasts that claim to cover the entire sport, but usually focus on the big brand teams to the exclusion of everyone else. Bunch Formation is a great example of a national podcast done right. They do spend most of their time talking about the most noteworthy teams and games, but they provide thoughtful coverage to the smaller conferences and side stories of the college football season. In an era of college football where so many loudest voices are focused on catering to the blue bloods, it's nice to see an outlet that seems sincerely interested in highlighting the best that college football has to offer. Jefferson Zero, thank you for that review. And one more here from Rob Bentley 7. Love the new podcast. Started following Chris due to his G5 work during Cincinnati's playoff season, and have gotten hooked to David's food takes and stories. Even though Cincinnati is now in the P4, I still appreciate that they discuss all the teams and conferences. David,
well, we actually watch those teams too. Like, that's why, like, whenever, like, when you see guys move up from the portal, it's like I have a pretty good feel of like, well, that guy's a little overrated, or that guy's like Fluff Bothwell. I mean, real ones new coming up. I was like, how did Mississippi State get that guy? Like, he's awesome. So
out of South Alabama.
Yeah, we watch those teams. We know what's going on with people. So it's been, thank you for appreciating that, because we like the whole sport.
And we will be talking about all 9 conference championship games.
Yeah,
Conference USA and MAC. We're not just going to talk about the big ones. And yeah, we were talking about right before we started recording that we get a lot of positive comments about that we do cover everything. You know, we do try to cover the biggest stories, but that's not the only thing going on in college football. I made this comment during rivalry week too, but like one of the things I just love about college football is that like some of the biggest games were in Nebraska and Hawaii and New Mexico and Alabama and Mississippi and all these places that don't have pro sports. We love college sports because it really is America's sport. It involves all of the country in a way that only college sports can do. So appreciate those reviews. Please leave them on Apple or a positive comment on Spotify, and we will read those. So with that, before we get into the conference championship games, we got some news to talk about. And to do that, we start off with the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper, because it's garbage.
And wanted to just follow up with any leftover thoughts from the college football playoff rankings reveal on Tuesday. We went live. The episode is in your feed. Our instant reactions to the playoff rankings. We went about 30 minutes. But every time we're like done with that show, I start to think about it a little bit more, and I developed some kind of different thoughts. David, did you have any other thoughts about the playoff that we didn't talk about?
So I accidentally enraged BYU Twitter today.
Yes, you did.
It's a long story. It's not worth getting into. But
it's not that long of a story. It's not that long of a story. You forgot that Arizona was a top 25 win.
That's basically. Arizona's the ones who should have been insulted, not BYU. But anyway, in their anger, they did ask an interesting question, which is, why is Notre Dame like clearly ahead of BYU? Is it just a dominance issue? I think a lot of that's the eye test, and a lot of it is lopsided scores. So BYU has looked pretty good late, but their resumes are not that different. I think it's an interesting question, but I think BYU fans are mad because so much of the conversation has been around Miami and Notre Dame, and BYU's been sandwiched in the middle, and they feel like they're up to Notre Dame. So
on that point, let me jump ahead. We got an email about that from Lincoln Roach, I think, Rock. He said, I just listened to the rankings episode. I know if BYU loses Saturday, they're likely out, but do you think Notre Dame really has the better resume? They'd still have 11 wins, including Utah, meaning BYU, with their only 2 losses coming from the current number 4 team. For being 6th in strength of schedule, I think their record should mean a lot more than a team whose argument is that they have good losses. BYU has some ugly wins, but they're still wins. What am I missing?
I think it's just that Notre Dame's been smashing people. I think the wins are pretty equal, but BYU has been, living on the edge for most of the season. Less so the last month or so. But their loss was pretty resounding. But it's just Notre Dame has been destroying people.
It's not just that the loss was resounding, that it was the game everybody watched that weekend. It was the biggest game of the weekend, BYU at Texas Tech, and BYU looked like it didn't belong on the same field as Texas Tech. And that eliminated BYU in the minds of a lot of people. I would also say they've had some close-ish wins that have been not as dominant. They beat Colorado by 3. Colorado had the ball late with a chance to win. Utah, it's a good win, but it was also, a 3-point win. Arizona, now a good win, but that was overtime. It didn't feel like a good win at the time, and so
I think
now
they were down double digits in the fourth, also.
So in Iowa State tie in the fourth quarter before like the two big plays changed that game, and then Cincinnati missed like 3 field goals and had a 4th down stop in the game. So like the a lot of the metrics like Sagarin and I think FPI and stuff like that have BYU like in the 15 to 20 range. Meanwhile, they have Notre Dame like top 10. So I think the advanced metrics also like Notre Dame as well. And the committee probably sees that. But I think last year's playoff, or after last year's bowl game, we came out thinking after BYU stomped Colorado, we were like, maybe BYU was the team we should have talked about more in terms of being in the playoff. Remember, they beat SMU, the SMU team that did get an at-large bid to the field. And it feels like I can understand the frustration from BYU fans that they feel like it's happening again, that they have a really, really good team that is not getting respected enough.
And I do think that there's an element of preseason bias that does play into some of this. Like when they lost Jake Ritzlaff, people, I think myself included, sort of just cast aside. It's like, well, they were going to be
the Big 12 favorite.
Yeah, they were. They were. Who's them in Tech? But yeah, they were right there. And then when they lost, it was so tight at the top that when they lost Ritzlaff, a lot of people kind of just tossed them aside. They got off to, they were sort of like the luckiest 6-0 team in the country. So it's like, well, we're kind of waiting for them to lose, and then they just haven't really lost. So I do think there's some preseason bias baked into that a little bit, but I do think if we're talking about just BYU and just Notre Dame, Notre Dame looks like a better football team. Like they have been dominant. They haven't really messed around. Like Boston College is the only game, but they've kind of even sort of been playing with their food. They have been demolishing teams. So
the other thing is, I think the committee, as I thought about it more, that debate of would they really flip Notre Dame and Miami if BYU gets blown out, and coupled with Alabama jumping Notre Dame for no sense at all, I think the committee set up a way to solve the Notre Dame Miami problem that they haven't been able to do because they put themselves in this problem. If BYU wins, they're in, and Notre Dame's out. Notre Dame and Miami are out, and so you're good. If BYU gets blown out, there's a reason to slide up Miami and Notre Dame. And Hunter Yurachek said after our show that head-to-head can be a bigger factor if teams are back-to-back. Because having gone through the mock committee, like you compare the teams, you do this and that, you have your teams. And then you look at the whole thing and you say, is there any like set of teams we need to compare again? And in the end, you've got Notre Dame and Miami back-to-back. And one of those teams is going to the playoff, the same record, and you're not putting in the team that beat the other team. That's a really, really bad look. And I think they know it would be a bad look. And it's why I do think the committee may actually flip them. And this is how they did it. And moving Alabama up is a way to also get Notre Dame and Miami closer and protect Alabama if it loses the SEC championship game. And if BYU plays close, plays Texas Tech really well and loses at the end, well, then you can keep enough distance between Notre Dame and Miami that Miami's not the last team out and there. So I think like that's not how it's supposed to go, but like I think that's what the committee's doing. I came away later Tuesday night thinking Notre Dame is actually in a lot more trouble than I first thought.
Counterpoint. Is it not silly? So let's say that the ACC apocalypse situation happens and the ACC champion is not in the playoff and Miami gets an at-large.
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't get any dumber than that.
No, but if you want a good conspiracy, there it is. That they're not going to keep a Power 4 team out. And they've opened the.
I like this. This is
because we won't because JMU is a late game Friday, Duke is the last game Saturday, so we'll kind of know some things. Like if JMU gets upset, then maybe it doesn't matter as much, or we'll know if Virginia has won, so we don't have to worry about Duke. Some of that stuff will get resolved, but yeah, there is a thought of like, would they really keep the ACC out when everybody knows Miami is the best?
I like the head in the sand approach that the ACC seems to be taking right now. Like Manny Diaz said it today. Like Jim Phillips did an interview and just like, the ACC champion's getting in. And it's like, no. If it's Duke, it like the numbers say that is like not going to happen.
I don't see a path for Duke unless even if JMU gets upset, probably. I don't know, but
this is an all-time scenario for an officiating controversy. By the way, this is like as kind of dry as it gets. If there is a call that goes against Duke, man, it is going to be flying.
Because if you look at Notre Dame's schedule, there is not much meat on that bone. They beat USC and what else? Navy, Pitt. That's it. Their best things are the losses, and one of the losses to Miami. And I think the committee's mistake was starting Notre Dame at 10 and starting Miami at 18, and they were too far apart. I had them at 11 and 12, Miami. I kept Miami ahead because I said, I'll wait for Miami to trip up again and then drop them because I know this is going to come up later. I swear I think I could do it. I rank 136 teams. You have to think like ahead of like, what are the possibilities? I don't want to have to drop somebody in a bad spot and have to explain it as, whoops, I should have done this before. I think the committee found themselves in a position where you can kind of back Notre Dame out and Miami in by doing this match. So we'll see. Elsewhere around the playoff, a spurned Steve Sarkisian was not happy that Texas is not going to be in the field. He questioned if Texas would keep playing big non-conference games, saying if they hadn't played Ohio State that they think they'd be in. And when asked if they would reconsider the big non-conference games, he said, quote, I think we have to. And at the end of the day, now we're going to 9 conference games. Then when he was asked about Ohio State, Michigan, he said, we're going to honor those games. We went there and they get to come here. So they're not canceling these games. I think this is
dumb.
Nonsense.
This is
you go.
2 things on this. One, it's a give and take. It's a risk. Why is Oklahoma in the position that they're in? Well, because they played Michigan in the non-conference and won that game. 2, there's a financial piece to this. Like, you can't just schedule, UTEP, Texas State, Rice. Like, you want to fill things up and have people be excited about non-conference. Like, that just is not how the world works. And so the financial piece, the playoff piece, in this specific scenario, they have a point, but like, it's a give and take, and there is value in playing these games because if you like Notre Dame, if you lose them close, especially if you're on the road, or if you win them, like imagine if Notre Dame, like, I don't know, was sitting there and had a loss to somebody. I think it would just look different. So I think these things, you can cry and complain about it, but it's just not how the sport works right now.
It's not going to happen. First of all, the SEC and a lot of these conferences with non-conference games are also requiring another Power 4 opponent for everybody. Yeah. So, like, you're going to have to do this one way or another. And 2, like you said, you got to fill the stadiums. And attendance in college football was going down and down and down for like 20 years. And so that's when these schools started scheduling out these big non-conference games, and the expanded playoff was going to give you more leeway to do so. It's business-wise, they know they have to schedule the bigger games because it brings in a lot more money, and ticket prices keep going up. Your parking keeps going up. Your concessions keep going up. You need people to come and attend games for it, and you have to do that with big games. So he can be upset. It's not going to happen. And also, by the way, look at Vanderbilt. They didn't play anybody notable in the non-conference. They're not in the field. They're 10-2 and they're not in it. Like,
and I will say, like, Texas has been one of the best schedulers. Like, Texas and Oklahoma have always had that kind of A, B, and C game, and it's a credit to them for that. And I think way more often than not, that's going to pay off for them in the expanded playoff area.
Yes. So was what it was. I don't really buy that that's going to happen. Yes, there was a couple of things. Yes, Nebraska got out of the Tennessee game and Greg Sankey threw a fit because of some alleged comment about the playoff. I think we can see based on the results, if you're 10-2 and don't have like great wins, you're not in. Look at Miami last year. Look at some of the 10. Look at BYU.
I mean, this was a talking point for Baylor for like the first handful of years in the playoff era because they never scheduled anyone. That was a program philosophy that Art Briles had, and it came up every single year, and it kept them out of the playoff. It was like in 2014, if they had played literally anyone, they'd probably get the bump, but they didn't. So they paid for it.
All right, let's talk about some coaching news where I've been buried for the past week. We'll start off with some hires that have been made since our last episode. Out at UCLA, Bob Chesney, a name that I'd heard out there for a long time and that this was kind of maybe close to done a few weeks ago before it finally got announced. I think they wanted to kind of see what the playoff situation and the Sun Belt situation was, but he's a guy, if you want a Curt Cignetti light, he's Curt Cignetti light, and it's not just because he coached at James Madison. He has coached at Division III and II and I and G5, and he's won everywhere he's been. And he's a younger guy. And UCLA put out a very wide search. They talked to a lot of people, like who aren't from California or have any of those connections. So they're going for just who they think is the best guy out there. And they got a guy who I think Penn State fans would have liked to have. I think Michigan State fans would have liked to have. Virginia Tech fans, if you didn't get James Franklin, they would have been happy with Bob Chesney. So I think it's a really good hire. The question is, like I said, no California connections whatsoever. He's only ever been on the East Coast. So what are you going to do with your staff and your GM and your this to build those California connections? Because you got to start over. But this guy's a winning coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have some concerns about not being at the big time, and that worries you maybe a little bit in the recruiting game, as you mentioned, in addition to the no local ties. But a lot of these guys that have been just like head coaches through and through for a while, I mean, he feels like a young guy, a new guy. He's been a head coach for 15 years at this point already. So when you have a feel for running an entire program and delegating and decision-making and all these things, that plan, these coaches aren't idiots. They understand, hey, D2 is different from FCS. FCS is different from the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt is going to be different from the Big Ten. You can kind of figure those things out. And so the track record with these guys that have had success with the levels is definitely better than like the hotshot coordinator, because for every Dan Lanning, there's a Jeremy Pruitt. And, you look at those guys' resumes, they're pretty similar. So I think it makes sense. UCLA has always been, it's like a worse version of Texas A&M, where it's like Texas A&M has never been great. UCLA has like barely been good, and it doesn't really make sense. And so, I like the hire overall. They kind of snuck in there, like you said. The idea that they would get a better candidate than a lot of these schools is kind of amazing in this market. I think they did.
They were also talking to Eric Morris, to Sean Lewis at San Diego State. I think Ryan Silverfield was in there as well. So again, a very wide range of guys, but I think they made a pretty good hire. You're going to have to support them. UCLA doesn't have much money. That's the problem. Like for a lot of these places, we're going to talk to about some other coaches here. We can think you hired a good coach, but if you're not going to give them the resources, it's not going to work. And that's very important. On that note, Kentucky hiring Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon. He is a Louisville native. He played at Louisville. He's from Kentucky. His dad played at Kentucky. He grew up as a big Kentucky fan. Another situation where I think they got a coach that a lot of other schools would have been happy to get, if not this year, then next year. And Will Stein was pretty picky. Like, he wasn't looking to just take any job. He was in a good spot there at Oregon. He's, I think, 39, very young guy.
36.
36.
We're both older than him, so
you're older than him. I'm not.
Yeah,
thankfully.
Okay, fair enough.
But like, really good creative play caller. Like, you think of the injuries Oregon has had this year and the different things he's been able to do. People speak very highly of him. It's been a pretty quick rise. I mean, 3 years ago he was the OC at UTSA.
6 years ago he's an OC at Lake Travis.
At the high school there. He was a Texas GA for a bit. So again, the coordinator market in this carousel was never going to be very big. Will Stein was going to be at the top of that list. And for Kentucky to get a home state guy to come home, it's a pretty big deal. But it's going to be the same thing. Do you have the money to help him? Kentucky's basketball roster is reportedly $22 million. So are you going to give the football coach the money and the resources he needs to succeed at football? Otherwise, it's not going to matter who you hire. But in terms of who they got, I think it's a good hire.
You got to find Antonio Gates, guys that can just play both sports as much as possible. Make that money stretch for you. I always think these young coaches, like whenever Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, I love that he brought Ruffin McNeil on, guy with a ton of experience that he trusted. Anytime to get these young guys that have been fast risers, have seen it, but have never really done it, and like the fishbowl concept of like, nobody's really cared about Will Stein for a long time. And now you're going to, a state program, a big program where you got a ton of fans. Like that experience can be a little different for guys. And so, yeah, in the coaching community, you talk to people like Will Stein's about as highly regarded as there is as a coordinator. But, that first year as a head coach is always tough. There's always a ton you learn. And I think you'll be well served to get some older coaches, some former head coaches on his staff to help kind of ease that transition.
Very much so. First-time head coach. He has recruited at a pretty high level there with Oregon, so he's kind of been in that. But SEC is a bit different, and you're kind of going into a gunfight with a knife, which is pretty tough. Stanford hires Tavita Pritchard, Washington Commanders quarterbacks coach. He was the former quarterback at Stanford. He threw the touchdown pass to beat USC in 2007, was it? The Pete Carroll.
That was the birth of the Jim Harbaugh ethos. 40-point underdogs in that game. The beginning of the end, I think, for the USC dynasty. So yeah.
Yeah, and then he was later the backup to Andrew Luck, who came in here and hired him. And then he spent like 10 to 15 years on the staff. Before the Commanders, he was on the Stanford staff for a long time under David Shaw. So he knows Stanford very much. Like, if you want to say Stanford's a difficult job, you got to know how to navigate it. Tavita Pritchard will know how to navigate it. Stanford did get, I think, a $50 million donation during this search to put to the program. So Andrew Luck is trying to raise the money and getting the support that you're going to need there. So, Dave, what do you think?
It balances the line between, yes, if there was ever a job where having a native son will help you, like Stanford is probably one of those, where it's just a unique place in a bajillion different ways. And you're in the Bay Area where, football isn't as culturally ingrained and bring up that fan support matters. But then it also makes me wonder, like, how much did you look outside of like the Stanford family and do you just get the guy that you feel comfortable with? Ultimately the results will decide that.
I can tell you, Jim Mora interviewed for the job. But it had and some other NFL guys too. It seemed like Andrew Luck was really kind of looking a lot toward the NFL, but Tavita Pritchard was the guy you heard from the beginning as like the one. And remember, this job had been open since like the summer. So this was a very, very long time that he had. And, is it a very inspiring hire? Not really. Hadn't been a head coach either. Kind of have to adjust to that. Stanford's in a very tough spot, with realignment and all that stuff. So like, I think it's like an okay hire, but I'm going to need to see a lot more for that to happen. Similarly, over at Cal, Tosh Lupoi expected to become the head coach. As of recording, it's not yet official, but my colleague Bruce Feldman and I first reported that they were in negotiations to hire him. Couple of final steps to get through. Hiring in the University of California system always takes a while. If you've ever seen a coach hired at UCLA or Cal or stuff like that, it takes a few days after it's reported before it comes announced because you got to go through a bunch of different things. But another native son coming home. He's from the Bay Area. He played at Cal. I think his dad might have played at Cal. He's coached at Cal. He's been at Washington, Alabama, 3 different stops in the NFL. Currently the defensive coordinator at Oregon, where he's done a very good job this year, by the way. It was like a top 5 defense at Oregon that people didn't expect to be that good. So that's big. I similar with Stanford, like you're getting a guy who knows Cal. And importantly, the feeling is that they are very optimistic, assuming this all goes through the plans that they have, to keep Jerinkwe Songapulitele, JKS, the freshman quarterback. They think they're going to be able to hold on to him, assuming this all goes through, which is big news because remember, Songapulitele was committed to Oregon. He flipped and signed with Oregon, then said, nah, I'd like to go to Cal instead. He goes to Cal. Has a pretty good year. They beat SMU in their last game.
I mean, he won the job out from Devin Brown. Like, they kind of brought Devin Brown, and it was assumed that he was going to be a starter. They brought them both to ACC Media Days. I talked to him a little bit in Charlotte. And
along those lines, the plan likely would be that Nick Rolovich stays on, and he's got a good connection with Songapulitele, the Hawaiian Pacific Islander stuff. Rolovich has a lot of ties there. They like each other. So there's a good chance he stays if this all goes through again. As of recording, it's not yet official, but that has been the expectation that is going to happen. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, Tosh has been known as like the talent acquisition guy for a long time, and
very good recruiter. One of the best West Coast recruiters there is. And
proving himself as a football coach at Oregon. You know, there was a lot of skepticism around that for a lot of his time, you know, early on as he kind of made his way up there. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think, Chris, we both agree, like, it's never been, I don't think I've ever been less confident about knowing how some of these things are going to work out, but I can see the path to it working.
Yeah, I think look, the last three coaches we just talked about, they're all either alumni or from the state. Like, they all went for people who know this place, and that's important. Cal is a pretty quick search. I was told, like, because remember, they fired Wilcox because they lost to Stanford 31-10. They were at that point, like, probably thinking about keeping him, but then the Stanford loss was so bad, even though they're going to a bowl game, that they change it. They win 7-5, 3 straight bowl games. Like, Cal is not in the dumps. Like, they've gone to 3 straight bowl games. I think losing Fernando Mendoza really hurt them in a way that they really want to make sure they don't lose JKS. Because if you lose a really good quarterback 2 years in a row, that's not a good look. So they're trying to make sure they step up.
Jay Knott. That was pretty, like, a big deal at the time too. It didn't work out that much at Oklahoma, but, like, I was a stud last year. So
yes. Similarly, Kansas State, Chris Klieman, the head coach, has announced his retirement. He is expected to be replaced by Collin Klein, Texas A&M offensive coordinator, former quarterback at Kansas State, former assistant coach. He was a Heisman finalist there. Like, he is Kansas State football. This had been rumored for a while, for a couple of weeks, and Klieman had been asked about it a couple of times and kind of shooed it away without saying it for sure. You know, after the Utah loss, he talked about the negativity around the program and the toll it was taking on everybody. We talked about it on this show and thought that he deserved kind of more respect for his body of work, which we agreed with. But there also is some health stuff, some family stuff going on. He alluded it in his statement. He mentioned his personal health was one of the reasons for it.
He's only 58. So.
Yeah. And, you know, he's Gene Taylor, the AD, also said a lot of good people are being driven out of college football because of the calendar, because of the toll that's being put on these coaches. And Chris Klieman getting out of retiring is one example of that. And I'd say there's a lot of people who've gotten out of college sports that I know because they just can't deal with everything that's going on. The flip side would be, that's what the money's for. That's why you're getting paid $5-6 million to kind of deal with that. And there will always be somebody who wants to take that job for that salary. But
my worst take ever was after Bob Stoops retired. I thought, you know, there is life-changing money in college coaching in a way that there just was not. I mean, Bobby Bowden was the first $1 million coach in like 97, 95, something like that. The first time a coach ever made $1 million. Now you got coordinators making 2 and 3. There's a bunch of head coaches over 10 million. One of them went 3 and 9 this year. So there's life-changing money in the sport now. And I thought, well, surely Bob Stoops, like, there's gonna be more people that start thinking about retirement in their 50s. That has not happened. Like, I think other than Nick Saban, like, Stoops is like pretty much the only other guy that's like been that left when he could still do it and still had like a pretty sizable market for his abilities. So
yeah, and that was around the same time as Chris Peterson too, who also got out for a similar reason. But instead, no, I mean, like, coaches are just they're maniacs. They're just wired different. Like this is all they can do. And so like, yes, they're getting all this money and this matters, but they really just want to coach football. It's like the only thing they've ever done. It's hard for them to get out of it. And they want to spend time doing that. And sometimes the calendar and all the stuff, the work that they have to do is tough. In terms of Collin Klein, presuming we believe he is the target to take over. The feeling has been Kansas State doesn't want to make it look like they're forcing out Chris Klieman and then installing Collin Klein, because that's not like how it's going exactly. And so I wouldn't be
quarterbacks last year.
I wouldn't be surprised if even as early as Thursday they announced Collin Klein. But Collin Klein's done a really good job at Texas A&M as the offensive coordinator there. Another young coordinator in a thin coordinator market who is going to get bigger jobs. He was in the mix at Oklahoma State. I think he was in the mix at Arkansas a bit. So
it feels like with him, it's like we want to give our guy a shot before he gets too big for our britches. Like you kind of see this a little bit with Arkansas and Rhett Lashley. Like if the timing had been right and Rhett Lashley is like a coordinator at Miami and Arkansas comes and says, hey, come home, take this job, he probably takes it. But now, like at SMU, you can get picky. And Collin Klein had clearly been on the fast track. I talked to some K-State people when he left from A&M. Like they were crushed. They were like, man, like we know how good he is. Like we and now it's like you're going to give a shot to a guy that means a lot to the university, probably a little bit before he's probably ready for that job. But you've got, Klieman's still going to be around. Obviously, he knows Kansas State. You want to help him, do everything you can to make him succeed. But then, hope he has that success there, and you don't have to. It's going to be hard for him to leave, And I think, he obviously played for a coach who made Kansas State his home. His name's on the stadium, and so I think that's the idea from K-State. I think it's a worthwhile gamble because he's young. It is a risk, but if it works, Kansas State should not be a destination job, and yet. For their last, if you count both Snyder runs and Klieman, it kind of has been. And so they've turned a place that's not a destination job on paper into one, and I think they're hoping the same thing with Collin Klein.
And we've seen Kansas State's offense fall off since Klein left, and that's been a issue for Kansas State since then. So I was talking to a coach, by the way, David, your camera's frozen, by the way, I'm not sure. Can you still hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, up now you're good. So I was talking to a coach a couple weeks ago about the idea of do you return to your alma mater or not? And the way this person put it to me was, I would only go to my alma mater to be the head coach if it's my first head coaching job or my last head coaching job. Because anything else can end really messy. If it's your first head coaching job and it doesn't work, they don't hate you. Because it's your first thing. If it's the end of your career, you can retire Mike Gundy type of way well enough where people don't want to destroy you, even if it gets pretty bad.
Mike Gundy, that was his first and his last head coaching job, so he just did both of them. So
that's true. But doing it in the middle, like a Scott Frost, is pretty tough because if it doesn't work and you're going to still be coaching, and there will be high expectation because you've done it somewhere else. And if it doesn't work, it's where Jim Harbaugh's a rare example ultimately of it working, but it didn't work they were almost going to fire him before he turned it around.
Well, he had to restructure his contract, basically bet on himself. And then that bet worked. Shout out to Connor Stallions.
So down at North Texas, hiring Neal Brown, the former West Virginia and Troy head coach. This search went pretty quickly. There were a ton of people who wanted this job. North Texas in Denton, been a sleeping giant forever. They're finally winning. A lot of people wanted this, but they had pretty quickly settled in on Neal Brown. Interesting hire. He brings head coaching experience at two different stops, did a good job at Troy, won 30-something games his last 3 years, got fired at West Virginia after 5 or 6 years, but he went to a bowl game in 4 of those last 5. It wasn't terrible. He was just not doing enough.
And West Virginia is part of that Nebraska-Tennessee club where the winds of change have blown against you really hard. And I think the fan bases are still trying to adjust to hey, we're not going to win 10, 11 games every year. What Rich Rod did in the Big East is literally not, I don't think it's possible at West Virginia. And I think that he was probably a victim to some of that.
I will say credit to West Virginia, signed a very good recruiting class today, one of the highest they've ever done. So maybe Rich Rod's figuring something out, but it was not a great first year for them either. So head coaching experience, pretty good winner. I think you like that. The question is, like, very little connection to Texas. Neal Brown has spent this year as a special assistant at Texas, basically just like an analyst on the University of Texas staff. Like 10, 12 years ago, he was, I think, the OC at Texas Tech for a couple of years. But that's it.
He got mad at me once. I picked Texas Tech like 6th in the Big 12 South. They ended up finishing like 4th, I think. So to be fair, but that was like his first year under Tommy Tuberville, and he was like, "What's the deal? What's the deal?"
He didn't have any. He almost no Texas players at Troy, just a couple of them at West Virginia. So he is going to need to put together a staff that has a lot of Texas connections. Because Eric Morris, the guy before him, was from Texas, played in Texas, spent nearly his entire career in Texas. If
Texas
you know anything,
forever, you might say.
If you know anything about this state, you need to know the high school coaches. You need to have relationships there. Matt Rule did it better than anybody as the outsider. He came in, embraced the Texas High School Coaches Association, hired a couple of guys onto his staff like Joey McGuire, goes to the conventions. Like, he really, really leaned into it. And Texas High School
There's a reason why you see Joey McGuire and some other coaches wearing the THSCA hats like during games. It's not because they love acronyms, I promise you.
So Neal Brown will have to do that. So I think it's like a solid hire. Like, I think the floor is pretty high for Neal Brown. And at North Texas, where they just so often just have bad seasons and you don't know why, I think that's pretty good. Now the roster is going to get taken apart here. Cam Hawkins and Drew Mestamaker, you're probably not going to have those guys, but
no.
It
is what it is. I mean, again, North Texas is on that list too of like, I don't know why. There's so many good football players, and the 7-on-7 culture, especially in the Metroplex, is so robust that I don't know why you can't find like more of the five. What is the kid's name that like had 300 yards receiving a couple weeks ago? Like the 5'10" Wyatt Young, like the 5'10" kids who maybe run like a 4.6, but nobody can cover them, and they understand spacing. And all these kids, like, there's a lot of those kids out there, and if you can find them, I think you can really succeed at North Texas. And I definitely think, keeping the spread concepts, leading into that. I mean, his teams were pretty physical at Troy, and there's an element of that you're going to need as well. But I think that wide open offense leading into that 7-on-7 culture in Texas and in the Metroplex is. We saw, obviously, huge part of Eric Morris's success. I feel like you got to lean into that at North Texas. At
USF, Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. This was interesting because I've been talking to a bunch of people, like, who's in on USF. You hear some names, Willie Simmons and stuff like that. And then this morning, I get a text from somebody who says, I hear Hartline's the guy. I was like, oh, that's not a name I'd heard really before. And then within like 20 minutes, it was out and all that stuff. So he is one of the best recruiters in the country. He is always signing a bunch of 5-stars at Ohio State. He brought Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, all out of high school in Florida up to Ohio State. So he's brought a lot of good talent there. He should be able to do that at USF, a place that has more resources than anybody in the group of 5 now. They have the highest budget for the roster. It was like $9-10 million this year. The school is likely going to approve and give them like a loan to maximize revenue sharing next year. So like they're going all out on player acquisition.
New stadium also.
New stadium, on campus stadium opening, I think in 2027. So they are taking a big swing here of like, we are going to be able to get good players here and pay for good players here. The concerns, he was an OC, but he only called plays this year. So he wasn't even calling plays. He's only ever coached at Ohio State. He started coaching in 2017, another young guy. So how does he do in the head coaching chair? How does he do it in a place he's never been before? Those are legitimate questions. But the goal here clearly was, we are going to take this football program and try to get the best collection of players we have in the group of 5. And I think you hired the guy who can do that.
Well, you mentioned the resources, and it's what raised the ceiling really high. It's why, going back to like the Dion piece of it, I thought it was weird that he wanted to pick Colorado over USF, because it's like, if you can be solid at USF, you can do some big things because you're on the top of the heap. You're not coaching uphill.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he's been picky. His name's come up for a bunch of jobs the last couple of years. And obviously this was one that he felt like made sense for him to leave Ohio State. He's got a pretty good gig. I guess he's cleared the way for Chip Kelly to come back, right? So, like, it makes sense. And I think the floor, like, that's why, it's USF is a place that you can win big. And the struggles that preceded Alex Golesh, I thought, were a little confounding in some ways. So
yeah,
good pick for Brian Hartline. We'll see if he can figure out all the things that you got to figure out as a head coach. But that's a great place to learn, because your margin for error is pretty large, quite frankly.
So they had won 4 games in 3 years under Jeff Scott and fired him. And Alex Golesh was not going to take the job originally, or was just like not very high on it until he talked to Weatherford and some of the money people who were like, no, we're going to give you everything you need here. And that convinced Golesh to take the job, and it worked. You go 9-3 this year. You probably should have done a little bit better, frankly. A couple of games, don't blow that 14-point lead against Memphis. You're in a pretty good spot. So things are very much trending up. I don't want to say, I think there's a low floor, high ceiling here. I think there are a lot of ways with a first-time guy in the situation where, like, it could just not, you could get talent, but it just doesn't work because he doesn't know head coaching. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I don't think this is like guaranteed to work, but I think they're doing everything you would need to reach that high upside. And I understand why they're doing that. Last one here. I don't think we talked about it last time. Oregon State, JaMarcus Shephard. He's the co-OC wide receivers coach at Alabama. He was previously with Kalen DeBoer at Washington, and he also had a stint at Washington State. He's a very good recruiter, a very energetic guy. But this hire very much surprised me, because he will be a first-time head coach. And everything I had heard out of Oregon State when they fired Trent Bray was, we need somebody who knows how to be a head coach. Trent Bray didn't know how to be a head coach. He didn't necessarily want to be a head coach, but they did it because Jonathan Smith left, and they wanted to keep the team together as everything was falling apart with realignment. So, Brent Vegan was in on this job at the Montana State coach. He was spotted at the airport. Jim Moore interviewed here. But they end up going with a first-time head coach. Very surprised by that. Fans are not liking AD Scott Barnes for a slew of reasons, but we'll see. What do you think?
I don't know him much at all. Like, he spent so much time on the West Coast. Like, we've been on this side. Like, I haven't spoken to him. I'm not familiar with him that much, and it's hard to. I covered that Washington team a little bit toward the end, and then obviously I've kept an eye on Alabama and know some guys on that staff. But we'll see. It's a shot that if you want to be a head coach, I understand you take, because if it doesn't work, you probably still have some pretty good options. We'll see what DeBoer's staff looks like on the other end of that, but man, that's going to be tough. I mean, it's just difficult. That's if you're ranking the hardest FBS coaching jobs right now, that Washington State, Oregon State, where you're adjusting to life in a different plane, it's tough. So figuring out, like, how do we succeed in this world is something that is tough to figure out, and having a game plan for that. So I don't envy him. It's a tough gig.
Okay. Let's talk about the open jobs, and we're going to talk about Penn State here. I didn't want to open the show with this because it may be out of date by the time you listen to it. But Penn State, they thought they were getting Kalani Sitake. Kalani Sitake decided to stay because BYU stepped up with a bunch of money for him for the football program. Not just the cookie crumble guy, but he
does get free crumble cookies, though, is my understanding. He gets a box a week. Is that right?
There'd been kind of, my understanding from talking to people was that Sitake had been frustrated for a while about the resources going to basketball compared to football. Like, they've got the guy who's going to be the number 1 basketball pick, I think. They got I forget his name.
Devonsa.
Yeah. And it's not happening in football. And Kalani's like looked around at other jobs too the last couple of years. And I think BYU maybe thought they never really would lose him. And then when that reality set in with this season they're having, they didn't want that to go away. So they keep him. He ultimately did want to stay there
for a little bit.
very underpaid. I don't think it's
Mhm.
public, but it's a lot lower than most people would think, like below 5, I
Mhm.
believe.
Mhm.
And you know, I think he went there. You know, he's BYU. Like he's the perfect fit for that job. I don't even know how good of a fit he really would have been at Penn State. Is like the other thing, but big for BYU to get him. Hold on to him. And as for Penn State, I'm sorry. And after that, Jeff Brom was also a target. He decided he's
That'd
sticking
have
with
been weird.
Louisville.
Probably the right move, Jeff.
So where does Penn State go from here? As of recording, I don't really know. Like Brian Dable, the former Giants head coach, in the mix. He's got support of the Pegulas, the owners of the Bills, who are big Penn State donors. Matt Campbell like hasn't gotten much traction, and I'm like, you hear different reasons why, but none of it really makes sense. You know, Jeff Hafley is now being talked about. He's the Packers defense coordinator, former head coach at Boston College. He worked with Penn State, or sorry, he worked with Pat Kraft at Boston College. The problem is Jeff Hafley's probably becoming an NFL head coach pretty soon. And getting him to leave the Packers right now when they're having a good season is difficult. Do
You can't get a
turn
coach to leave before the playoffs? Can't do that?
or the regular season? Do you turn to PJ Fleck as like a backup option here? Like Terry Smith.
Here's my thought, Chris. I think at this point, the worst you can do is say no. You pick up the phone and you say, James, our bad. please come back. You got an accomplished coach. He's won double-digit games, like a bunch of the last few seasons. Just see.
I mean, like, you hired a really, really, really successful coach. You can't be like, here's our 10th option, or like, here we're promoting Terry Smith. Like, that is not.
Apparently, you can and may have to. Like, it is what it is.
That's the kind of situation that ADs lose their jobs over. If you don't have, because I graded Penn State an A job. They should have been able to get really good people, and they haven't. And it's a problem. And people
Why
are very
do you think
concerned.
It's happening?
I think they took some swings at coaches who were never going to come and maybe didn't focus in on enough on the guys they probably could get. It's, you know, like, I don't know how you don't get Eli Drinkwitz, or I don't know how you can't convince Jeff Brom necessarily to make it happen. I mean, Brent Key signed an extension. Clark Lee signed an extension. Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech. Like, these were I think the range of guys maybe you should have like focused in on instead of like big guys. Like, the Kalen DeBoer stuff that was out there. It's hard to say how real that was. You know, if he had lost the Iron Bowl, you know, maybe fans would want him out, but that was always going to be a tough sell. And this is really just Kraft. Like, I don't believe there's like a big search committee or firm or anything. And so it's going very poorly there in a way I didn't expect. So
I think what's not being spoken enough is that you've got to walk in there and kill it at a job that is not as easy as people think. And I think, like, if you go 9-3 at Penn State, people are going to be furious. And
here's the thing,
being better than James Franklin is asking a lot. And I wonder if there's an element of like, why do I want to sign up for that if I got a good situation where I'm at, or I can improve my situation and go somewhere where, like, Penn State at best is at least the third, maybe fourth best job in the Big Ten. Maybe you could make a case for fifth. And so, like, why do I want to do that and try to do better than James Franklin? That's a big ask versus.
But the thing is, like
Lane Kiffin going to LSU, where it's like, yeah, they want to win national championships, but like, you can do better than Brian Kelly pretty quickly.
The thing is, like, it's not hard to go 9-3 at Penn State is the thing. Like that.
I think it's harder than people think it is. That's what I'm saying.
I don't like the Big Ten is not deep. You should always have one of the most talented rosters. You've got the Northeast, like, but we'll see. It's hard to say where it's going to go right now. I just know a lot of those options are not going to excite the fans, and this has gotten to a place where it shouldn't have when you think of all the options that are off the board. So, you know, and the options that have gone elsewhere, like Pat Fitzgerald interviewed here, like Bob Chesney was in the mix here, and now they're at other Big Ten schools and not Penn State, and you can't be like, we got Terry Smith. That is not going to work. So stay tuned for the latest on that. At Tulane, Blake Baker, the DC at LSU, has been a top guy for a while. He played there. He knows the place well. But some other names: Southern Miss head coach Charles Huff, Kennesaw State head coach Jerry Mack, Will Hall, who's currently on the Tulane staff, former Southern Miss head coach, Billy Napier, potentially. Ed Orgeron is interested, but I don't think Tulane is very interested in him. But this is one of the top group of 5 jobs. Those are some of the names I've heard from talking to people. James Madison, big pool. I'll just list some names here, but these are the names that are in the pool right now based on who I've talked to around that search. Billy Napier, Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky, Bryant Haynes, the Indiana defense coordinator, former James Madison assistant, FIU coach Willie Simmons, Drew Cronick, the Navy offensive coordinator, former Mercer head coach, Miami defense coordinator Corey Heatherman, current JMU defense coordinator Colin Hitchler, who would otherwise just follow Bob Chesney to UCLA, Jerry Mack again at Kennesaw, Jay Hill, BYU defense coordinator, Lehigh head coach Kevin Cahill, New Hampshire head coach Ricky Santos, Mercer head coach Mike Jacobs, and maybe Penn State co-DC Anthony Poindexter, who's like a legend in Virginia. So that James Madison is every single coach in the history of the program has a winning record. The last 4 head coaches have won at least 70% of their games. And so the only questions are, what are the resources for staff and rev share? And they offered to give the most to Bob Chesney if he stayed. He wasn't going to stay, but it's a good job. It's just not as good as the American jobs because of the money.
Mm-hmm.
So
could do worse than Willie Simmons,
who's 7-5, did an unbelievable job at FIU this first year.
Mm-hmm.
Memphis, kind of a similar pool with the Tulane search a little bit. Charles Huff, Jerry Mack. Jerry Mack is from Memphis, the Kennesaw State head coach. Blake Baker, Tyson Helton again. Dan Mullen's name comes up. It's hard to know how real that is. Mullen said publicly he's coming back to UNLV next year. He said he doesn't want the Arkansas job. Like, he said some of that stuff publicly. Not to say coaches have ever gone back on their word, but Memphis is a place that, their roster was like $6 million this year. They paid more than Tulane. They got a lot of money. They got good resources, good facilities. It's a good job. They should be able to get somebody who can win there. They've been sustaining success. UAB has been a complete mess as of Tuesday night. The finalists were Ryan Beard at Missouri State head coach, Presbyterian head coach Steve Englehart. We are the foremost Presbyterian football podcast among National College Football podcasts, by the way. We have talked about them. We have talked about them a couple of times. Non-scholarship Pioneer Football League. And then Alex Mortensen, the current interim head coach. As of Wednesday, it sounded like Beard was less likely to get it. This search has been very strange. A lot of coaches have pulled out because of various money things. There's a divide between athletics and the university and the boosters over which direction to go. So this may be done by the time you're listening to this, but it's taken some unexpected turns and it may continue to do so, is what it is there. Coastal Carolina.
Tim Hasselbeck not available there?
Yeah. For the second search in a row, by the way, it's been a complete mess. It was a mess, the search that ended up with Trent Dilfer as well. Coastal Carolina, Kerwin Bell, Western Carolina head coach. We've talked about Western Carolina on here a couple of times with what they were doing offensively. West Georgia head coach Joel Taylor. He's a big South Carolina guy. He spent almost his whole career there. Drew Cronick, again, the OC at Navy potentially. That one's been harder to pin down, but Coastal's a better job than it used to be. We'll see. And then UConn has been very quiet. I think Kevin Cahill is at least one guy in the mix. The Lehigh head coach, they're undefeated, top 4 in the FCS. I think Joe Moorhead is potential here. He was a former OC at UConn when they went to the Fiesta Bowl. But Gordon Samus, I think it's Samus or Sammys. I've never actually said it out loud. The OC, who's done a really good job this year. He's a potential if they go internally. But the last search ended up with Jim Mora, and it went like way outside the box. So this is a search that really could go any different direction. David, any thoughts on those G5 jobs and openings or coaches?
No, I'm curious. The Jed Fish and the Jim Mora of it all have had me really curious if there is something to, like, guys with NFL sensibilities being able to thrive a little bit more in this era. It does make me wonder. There's some examples like going the other way, but I'm curious. So
yeah, so stay tuned to The Athletic. I'll have more on that as it happens. All right, that was a lot of coaching stuff to get through. But before we get to the game previews, we got some mailbag questions I wanted to get to. I've had these in here for a while, so figure it's a good time to get to them. So for that, we go to the mailbag.
I'm not going to, so quit asking.
Question from Ashwin, who says, "Hi, Chris and David. How do the logistics work when you travel to a game? Do you get to pick the game? Do you have to pay for your hotel, car, flight, meals? I think it would be interesting to get some insight into how traveling works for your jobs." Very good question. David, do you want to take it, or I can take it? What do you think?
I'll take it, and you can kind of interject. So our system at The Athletic has changed a lot over the years because there's no we have a big staff, and so places that have smaller staff, like you might have a little bit more control of where you go. Generally, things get kind of regional during the season because we do have a lot of staff. We have some people on the West Coast. I'm East Coast-ish, ACC, SEC kind of country, so I do a lot of that stuff. Chris, you and Sam Conn mostly hold down Texas, Oklahoma, that I-35 window. And then sometimes you can venture out of that, but generally that's how it goes. But yeah, we kind of say where we want to go, and then our bosses sort of decide, okay, for this weekend we want to have these people here. We don't want to staff this game. This game we want to. It's sort of complicated, but yeah, we don't pay for. I mean, the Athletic, the New York Times pay for flights and hotel.
It's like a month out. We pitch for these next 4 weeks, here are games I would like to go to, or I just want to stay at home because I have to do something else. And we kind of pitch which games you'd like to go to. It's paid for by The Athletic / technically the New York Times. We've got a travel website. You book everything through there, your flights, your hotels, or whatever. If there's anything you pay for yourself, you expense it through one of the apps where you turn in your receipts and all that kind of stuff. Usually, even if it's local-ish, if it's a couple hours away, I'll take a rental car. Not my own car.
It's cheaper than mileage.
In terms of us, we have a Michigan reporter, an Ohio State reporter, a Georgia reporter. So for most of us, it's sometimes hard to get one of those teams' games because we already have somebody there. When we had 40 writers on staff, that became even harder because we had writers at all the big games anyway through the beat writers. It's changed a little bit now. But I've been doing generally, if there's a big game at Oklahoma, I'm usually there, or down at TCU or whatever. Usually there. I flew to Michigan, Texas last year. I've gone to Oregon a couple of times for games. You'll get out. I went to Tulane. So it's
kind of there's some random ones. Because I was doing our Dion stuff. I went to 4 of Colorado's first 5 games.
Yeah.
We planned that out in the summer. We were like, well, we're going to stick with that. I'll skip the Colorado State game, but I'm going to go to everything else. I pitched my road trip this year. I think I pitched that in March, and they loved the idea.
The road trip of
6 games in 5 days.
6 games in 5 days. You pitch sometimes and now we're pitching national. Who wants to go to the national championship game? Who wants to go to coaches convention? We've kind of put those requests in. We've been assigned playoff teams. It's TBD on determining who makes the playoff, but I'll probably be with Oklahoma because they're nearby and they're making it. Last year I was with SMU because they were local. So it kind of helps me in that sense. And I'm going to the Big 12 championship game. You're going to the ACC championship game because they're both.
So it's just it makes sense budgetary wise. It's money. We have resources. We want to use those in the best way that we can. And so I'm not going to go to the ACC championship. I live in Charlotte. It's a 20-minute drive. I'm probably never going to go to the SEC championship again unless something happens or some compelling reason for me to go there. It just is what it is.
I've been to so many Cotton Bowls and will continue to go to the Cotton Bowl. In terms of at the stadium, you usually get a parking pass with your credential.
Sometimes North Carolina.
What, did you not get one?
No. I've had to pay both times. It's the whole thing. Anyway.
They'll usually give you a meal in the press box. Sometimes it's buffet style. Sometimes it's box style. Sometimes they'll give you something after the game. Depends on where you're at. A lot of the places in Texas will have barbecue catered toward the stadium. But we don't.
Chris, when we at some point this offseason, we should do a ranking of the best press box meals consistently.
I haven't
Texas
been to
Tech was up there always.
I haven't been enough to know that, but also we travel on our own. We don't travel with the teams or anything. I think that's kind of Sometimes people think we do, that we travel with the teams and stuff like that. That is not the case. Funny story, when I was at Michigan State as a senior, I was covering basketball team, and someone who was working with the athletics department kind of was asked, like, how do you go to the games? And I said, oh yeah, we drive ourselves or we fly. And they said, oh really? I didn't know you don't travel with the team. That person was Kirk Cousins, who was the quarterback who was like interning in the athletics communications office despite being like an all Big Ten quarterback. And he even he didn't know we didn't travel with them, and he's on the team. So it's all paid for by us. You'll get a meal, at the stadium, but generally we pay for all our stuff there. Hope that answered the question. If you have any more,
it is interesting, like stuff does change, like depending on where you're at. So like when I was at the student paper at Missouri, we had to cover the Alamo Bowl, and we stayed like there's like media hotels for the bowl games and some championship games, which usually like a reduced rate. It's usually like an overpriced hotel, and if it's in a major metro, it's kind of pointless to stay there. But anyway, well, student papers have like less than no money basically. So we had 6 reporters that would travel down to San Antonio for the Journalism Bowl between Missouri and Northwestern. And then we stayed in a Days Inn on the side of the highway. Like there was a girl on our staff. So 5 of us were in one room and she had her own room.
Is that the Days Inn? Is that the Days Inn right by the convention center?
I don't remember.
I think I've stayed at that one for the coaches convention when I was paying my own way to the coaches convention.
It was not nice. But then like
there's a Denny's there.
A year later, I'm working for the Oklahoman. I didn't really know how it worked. I was like 21. I didn't ask a lot of questions. And when I found out I was getting my own hotel room, buddy, I thought I had like made it. I was like, oh man.
My first year at the Athletic, I just stayed at like Days Inns or
you were getting yelled at. Like,
and then
spend our money.
Stuart Mandel was like, Chris, stay at Marriott's. What are you doing? And so I'm not paying for it, so you get some points that way. But that's how that's what travel is. We already answered the BYU Notre Dame question here, but another one from Chrisman Lewis. If the Pitt coach expressly indicated that the Notre Dame game was not a must-win, then doesn't that say something about Notre Dame's unfair advantage? As an independent, it's automatically a non-conference game for teams in the ACC and the Big Ten and everybody else who play them, which means their opponents are not as incentivized to beat them at all costs in order to make it to their conference championship game. On the other hand, you have an 11-1 BYU that's gone head-to-head, beaten several decent opponents in the Big 12, and they are currently sitting on the outside. It's an issue I think that needs to be related to the CFP Notre Dame as an independent. That's an interesting, I had not thought of that.
Well, I think so I'll say this, because you grew up in Big Ten country, so it's a little bit different.
Yes.
When you have traditional rivalries with Notre Dame, then that's a little bit different. But for everybody like outside of the Big Ten window, like when you get a chance to play Notre Dame, like you're like, this is awesome. Like when Georgia played them, Arkansas played them, like when you get to play them in a game that's not traditional, like people are like fired up for that because it's like Notre Dame, it's like the biggest brand in the sport, the most history in the sport, all this other stuff. So I do wonder about like that dynamic with some of these like ACC schools that they play, maybe some of the Big Ten schools. I don't think there's anything to that, but it's an interesting thought.
I think the ideas hold some weight late in the season. Like Pitt was in the position where it was not going to make the field as an at-large. It could only get in by winning the ACC. So the fact that it was a bit of a unique situation, but I think you're right overall, and that teams get up for Notre Dame, and it's not that much of a thing.
Because it's Notre Dame.
It's a good question. So, all right. So after all of that, we only got 9 games to talk about conference championship weekend. Let's get into the game previews.
This is for all the Tostitos.
We're going to talk about Big Ten first. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Indiana. The game.
I'd like to say, Chris, for the record, I'm excited to watch this game. I will have it on my second screen in Bank of America Stadium, just so that people say I hate the Big Ten. I'm excited to watch Ohio State and Indiana.
Game is at 8:00 Eastern on Fox Saturday night in Indianapolis. Ohio State's a 4-point favorite. This is so weird because 1 versus 2, like in the history of college football, you call it game of the century. Like it used to be like the biggest thing. And yet this game has almost no stakes. Both of these teams are getting a bye. Perhaps what's most on the line is the Heisman Trophy for Fernando Mendoza or Julian Sayin. So it creates a weird dynamic. College Game Day is not going there. which if you think about College Game Day not going to 1 versus 2 kind of tells you kind of the weird situation of it all. Although obviously ESPN does not have Big Ten games. So that's a little bit weird. Here's a stat. Ohio State has beaten Indiana 29 times in a row. The last win came in 1988. I was not born then. Indiana has never beaten Ohio State in my lifetime. And yet Ohio State, only a 4-point favorite. They blew out Indiana last year. What do you think?
I want to believe in Indiana. In my heart, I'm like, I like it. But I can't shake, like, Oregon. Is Oregon that good? We've talked about them this year. Like, the Penn State thing is major red flags when it comes to just, like, matching up with athletes. It feels like a possible smashing could be afoot, just because when Indiana has played teams that can match them with athletes, it has not gone well for them. Is this team different? I don't know the answer to that. And there are some reasons to say yes. There are a lot to say probably not. So, I think ultimately the Heisman is the most intriguing thing about this, because if either of these quarterbacks set the world on fire, they're probably winning it. If it's kind of an ugly game, Diego Pavia, get ready and wear your nicest suit with, like, I don't know what you'd put on it on the inside.
Yeah. The advanced metrics, by the way, have this as a close game. Like Ohio State by like 5. And I do think this Indiana team is a lot better than last year's team.
I think I do, but I don't know.
Like,
I will say this. I will say this. The idea that Ohio State is better than last year is ridiculous to me. I just don't think that's true at all. Like, there seems to be this like growing narrative that that's the case. It's like the Big Ten was bad. They are not that much better than. I mean, they're not better than last year. I just don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, and
they just haven't been tested. They'll be tested here, but I think this game will tell us more about Indiana than it will about Ohio State.
Yes, I have just seen too many games over the last 2 years where Indiana goes up against a team that is really good on the lines and they struggle. Michigan last year. Michigan was a bad team. Indiana barely got out of that game.
Yep.
Ohio State game, Notre Dame game this year.
Penn State last year and this year.
Iowa game this year. Penn State game this year. Now they did go to Oregon and win by 10. Like, that is the one thing that makes you feel like this Indiana team is different.
But we've been asking all season, like, is Oregon good? Like, we think so, but if you lean in on why you think they're good, the reasons get thin in a hurry.
Yeah. I'm going to go Ohio State wins and covers. I think I've seen too many Ohio State Big Ten championship game blowouts. You know, of all the conference championship games, this one is usually the least exciting. It's rarely competitive. It's partly because you had the Big Ten West there for a number of years, but I'm gonna say Ohio State wins, and I think Ohio State wins pretty big, like
13 to 17. Yeah, maybe. I definitely think Ohio State wins and covers. I don't think it'll be particularly close.
If they don't, if Indiana beats Ohio State for the first time in my lifetime, that's going to be crazy and unbelievable story. And Fernando Mendoza's winning the Heisman Trophy. Like, that is
100%.
That would be cool.
Saying will win depending on how the game goes. If it goes like it did against Michigan, probably not. He's gonna need some laser beams in there, because if it's like Jeremiah Smith, getting a free release and he lobbing it into a giant window because he's got the guy 4 steps behind him. I don't know. Like, Sayin hasn't been on my ballot all year for a lot of the reasons that we talked about. I think he's the 4th best player on his team, which doesn't say that much about him. It says more about Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Arvell Reese. Like, those guys are studs. And so that to me is a problem.
He played well against Michigan. I think better than you think.
He did.
Forgot to do the records update. Reminder: the loser has to Uber Eats food to another restaurant from one restaurant. We only got a handful.
Are you coming to the coaching convention this year? Do you know that yet?
I have not been told my travel yet, so I do not know. But week 4, David went 6-4. I went 5-5. Overall, David is 69, 57-2. I am 66, 60-2. So I am 3 games behind you with, I don't know if we're going to do bowls or not. Probably not. I don't know. We'll
Probably
see.
just
But
CFP. I don't know.
I got a little bit of room. Part of me is like, should I pick Indiana just because I need to find some picks to catch up to you? But I don't feel great about it. Let's go to the SEC. Number 3, Georgia versus number 9, Alabama, 4:00 Eastern, ABC in Atlanta on Saturday. Georgia's a 2.5-point favorite. These teams played earlier in the season. Alabama won at Georgia. My thoughts, neither of these teams are running the ball all that well. And Ty Simpson, the last month, has not been Ty Simpson in the first half of the season. David, what do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned the Simpson thing. I still can't shake Kalen DeBoer in big games and Kirby Smart against Alabama. Like, I don't think either of those things are flukes. Georgia does not play its best against Alabama. And Kalen DeBoer seems to have another gear that he goes into. It's like an even blacker hoodie that he seems to have when he's playing big-time games like this. 2-0 against Georgia, I believe. I think he'll make it 3-0.
Yeah, I'm Kirby Smart 1-8 against Alabama. I'm going with Alabama. They're the underdog, so don't need to lay any points or anything. It's not at the super hard place to play, such as 5-7 Auburn, like Hunter Yurchek said. But in Atlanta, both these teams feel comfortable here. Alabama, they're probably safe. I can't see them getting dropped out. It is a weird spot again where it's like, does this matter to either team? I will say, if Alabama wins, I think they jump up to a first-round bye. I think they get up to that number 4
It's
spot.
definitely possible. I'm not as certain as you, but it's possible.
Because teams 5 through 8 do not play, and 6, 7, 8 are SEC teams. And Alabama will, as the SEC champion, will have to go ahead of those SEC teams. They will have had 2 wins against Georgia, arguably the 2 best wins in the country. So I think Alabama could jump up if they win. I'm going to go Alabama. I'm worried I need to find some places to pick against you, but is what it is.
Well, we'll see. I've been known to flip my picks at times, Chris.
You do. Then I see it when it comes up, and I'm like, wait a minute. I wanted to fade you more.
That's what I think a little bit closer look. We'll have to see. So maybe you have to just guess on some of these. But yeah, I think we'll attempt. But I think Alabama keeps it rolling. So
the Big 12 championship game. Number 4, Texas Tech versus number 11, BYU. Noon Eastern, ABC from Arlington, Texas. I will be there. These teams also played earlier in the year. Texas Tech won 29-7 in Lubbock. My feelings on this, the feelings I had going into the first game. The number 1 question I wanted to know, could BYU block Texas Tech's front? They could not. They were in hell the entire game. And it should have been even more, but Texas Tech couldn't finish in the red zone. And they had that weird 4th down before halftime instead of kicking. It was 29-7 is not as close as that game was. I think Texas Tech wins big again. They have won every game other than Arizona State, which they lost with the backup quarterback. Every other game they have won by at least, I think, 3 touchdowns. They have been merciless all season, and they're a team I don't think we talk about enough as one that could actually make some noise in the playoff. This game is going to be sold out. I think it's going to be a great crowd. BYU travels really well. Texas Tech.
Well,
Dallas.
BYU doesn't travel well. They're just everywhere. There's a ton
they're
of BYU
everywhere.
fans in
So
Dallas.
I'm very curious what the fan divide is going to be. The environment should be great. This is arguably the best conference championship game, or at least the most interesting one, because BYU, you win, you're in. And so there's a lot on the line here. I'm actually really fired up for this game, but I think Texas Tech wins. I think they roll.
Here's the question. So Aaron Roderick, BYU's OC, you can't block them. I think they were curious in their first matchup. Halftime adjustments very much overrated. Rematch adjustments not so much. And I think if you're Texas Tech, you're probably just going to play football. Hey, let's bring our rush 4, throw in some blitzes there. We don't have to do a ton of exotic coverages, a ton of exotic blitzes because we can beat them up front. Can you counter that? Can you have some curveballs in your bag to keep the pass rush at bay? Because, again, if you can't block them, you go into that game with a different mindset in how you game plan for that game, and you've got a really good staff. I do think, the Kalani Sitake of it all probably helped them a little bit in terms of like, you kind of know that this is your guy and you're all in, if there was any doubt about that. And so I do think BYU might make this thing interesting. The only question is, can you do that for 60 minutes? I think that might require winning the turnover battle. You can't just let them grind you up front in the running game. And they're going to try to get Jacob Rodriguez a touchdown again to get him to New York City. I appreciate the Heisman spamming that Texas Tech has been doing with Jacob Rodriguez.
I really got to respect Texas Tech. Like, they have not, other than Arizona State, which was weird because your quarterback got hurt and there was a couple other things. But like, other than that, they have not played a bad game. Like they have been on, like, that was the question. How are these guys going to gel? Is it going to be their week to week? Is the chemistry going to be fitting? They've been locked in all year. It's been very impressive. I'm going to go Tech wins big. I hope BYU makes it a game because it'd be a lot more fun.
Yeah, I think I'll pick Tech, but I think BYU, like if they're up like 17-13 at half, I can't say that I'd be shocked. It's just, can you go the distance? But I think Texas Tech wins and covers.
Yeah, I think they cover 12.5 is a lot, but that's a lot less than Texas Tech wins every other game. ACC, where Mr. David Ubben will be. Number 7, Virginia versus Duke. 8 o'clock Eastern, ABC, Saturday in Charlotte. Virginia is a 3.5-point favorite. These teams played a couple of weeks ago. Virginia won 34-17. If Duke wins, the ACC may not get a spot in the playoff because Duke is only 7-5. Virginia, since Chandler Morris came back healthy after the Wake injury, they've been real solid the last 2 games. They were really like not great in the middle of the season, and then they lost to Wake, but they've looked like refocused the last 2 games, including against Duke. I am going to go Virginia here. I don't think we get the chaos. Maybe I should, because it's the ACC, and shouldn't you be banking on ACC chaos at all times? But after seeing this a couple of weeks ago, Virginia just looks a lot better. What do you think?
Do you know what the score was after 3 quarters of that Duke Virginia game, Chris?
I don't forget, but it's pretty lopsided, wasn't it?
It's 31-3.
Yeah.
34-17 doesn't sound like you got smacked. It sounds like, oh, maybe they added a late touchdown. No.
Yeah.
It was butt kicking. And there's not a lot of games that you see that play out like that and then just are a completely different game. Like, that was 3 weeks ago. It's not that long. So, and that game, by the way, you know where that game was played, Chris?
Duke.
Yeah, it was in Durham, and now they're going to play on a neutral field. I can't imagine the atmosphere will be that electric, but maybe I'm wrong. This is my first ACC championship game, so we'll see. But
the ACC championship game is always like, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it's always like the saddest championship game because it's always like cold and wet.
Yeah.
Like SEC's in a dome, Big 12's in a dome, Big 10's in a dome. You got the ACC outside. It's night. It's December. It never looks great. The fans usually don't get a big crowd there. It's always kind of of all the Power 4 ones, it's always kind of the strangest one. Part of me thinks they should go to campus sites or something like that, but they like doing it there.
Maybe. Just play it inside the Spectrum Center and do like an arena game. I know that I'd watch, actually. But I have a hard time seeing how this isn't Virginia. I'm with you. The looming ACC chaos feels like something to be noted, but Virginia.
Like Darian Ment's a really good quarterback for Duke. He's had a really good year. Like you want to tell me he has a game of his life and they do something? Like, sure, they beat Wake Forest really handily a couple of weeks ago. Wake Forest is a solid team. Last week,
you don't see a lot of like championship week upsets. Both these teams are both teams are always dialed in. Like, there've been a few, but you don't like. I'm trying to remember. Like, there's not a ton of like championship game shockers where you're just like, how did that happen? I'd have to think back. But a lot of the time, it's just a smashing from a really good team.
I mean, like Michigan State, 2013, Ohio State knocked them out of the championship game, but it doesn't happen very often. But they're not a big favorite. It's a 3.5-point spread. So we'll see. The American, presented by Soar the Eagle, number 24 North Texas at number 20 Tulane, 8 o'clock Eastern, Friday night, ABC. North Texas, a 2.5-point favorite on the road. The Mean Green have scored 50-plus points in, I think, 7 games this season. Both of these coaches have taken other jobs, but are sticking with their teams. the winner of this game will go to the playoff. I love this North Texas team, but I also went to that USF game where they got physically manhandled and committed a bunch of turnovers. And it was more lopsided than it was because of the turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
But Tulane's got really good talent. And when they're on, they are the best group of 5 team in the country. The problem is they're just not always on. They lost the championship game to Army last year. They've had some games this year where you thought they should have won by a lot more than they do. They've been very inconsistent. You know that North Texas you feel like North Texas is probably going to put up a ton of points. And can Jake Retzlaff and Tulane keep up? What do you think?
If it's a track meet, I think Tulane's going to struggle. But if they can ugly it up a little bit and not let just this thing be a track meet up and down the field, because if it ends up being that, I like North Texas. I think it will be. I'm going to take North Texas to win this thing on the road.
You're going to take North Texas on the road. I'm going to go Tulane, giving me a couple of points at home. It's interesting. When John Summerall took the Tulane job at his opening press conference, he said, "We will go to the college football playoff. And we will win it," is what he said. But to get there, kind of on his way out, I think would be pretty cool. Tulane's is the 4th straight conference championship game they've been, and North Texas hasn't been on the stage before. On the road, I'm going to go Tulane. I don't feel great about it with how inconsistent they've been, but give me the home team. Over in the Sun Belt, Troy at number 25, James Madison, 7 o'clock Eastern, ESPN. JMU on Friday night, also Friday night. All the G5 games except for the MAC are on Friday night, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
JMU, a 23.5 point favorite. They have blown out they have blown out everybody in the Sun Belt except for weirdly Georgia State, who went 1-11. But JMU was kind of using 2 quarterbacks early. Alonzo Barnett was coming back from an injury. They had Matt Sluka, who had transferred back from UNLV after that whole thing. Barnett's been good, 33 total touchdowns, 17 interceptions, dual threat guy. Running back Wayne Knight, not the guy from Seinfeld, 1,000-yard rusher. Troy on the meeting. Troy has won 7 of 9 under Jared Parker, second-year coach. They've been pretty good. Goose Crowder, the quarterback, injured his shoulder early in the season, but he is back the last few weeks. They beat Southern Miss last week to get into this game. 23.5 point favorite. I think we're both picking JMU. JMU, if they win, will have to wait till Saturday night to know their playoff chances. But in terms of covering, do you think they do? I think JMU does. I think they try to make a statement.
Here's what I do think they cover. Here's what I want to see, though. James Madison, when you take care of business on Saturday night, I don't know how far it is from Harrisonburg to Charlotte, but I feel like you have a responsibility to trek to Charlotte in JMU gear and become the biggest Duke fans of all time. So JMU, you should have some fans at that ACC championship game because you might not get this shot again for a long time. With the status of the American, it's always going to be hard. The American and the Mountain West, it's going to be tough to get in the playoff. This might be your one shot for a while. So even in the 16
Pac-12,
team,
but yeah,
and the new Pac-12. But JMU fans, get to Charlotte, cheer on Duke.
Picking them to cover?
Yes.
All right, Mountain West, UNLV at Boise State, 8 o'clock Eastern, Friday on Fox. There was a 4-way tie for the Mountain West Championship. These 2 teams came out on top because of computer rankings. These 2 teams played earlier this season. Boise won 56-31.
Yeah.
It's the third year in a row this matchup is happening. Boise has won the previous 2. UNLV has lost 10 straight to Boise. They haven't beaten Boise State since 1976. UNLV is led by Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year, Anthony Calandria, former Virginia quarterback. Boise's quarterback, Maddox Madsen, by the way, has been injured. He's missed the last 3 games.
Yeah.
He's missed the last 3 games. They've not been great the last month, Boise. Maddox Madsen will start in this game. How healthy is he? I don't know. But I do know that Boise running back Dylan Riley had 200 yards in the first matchup between these teams because UNLV is 89th in scoring defense. I think we're going to get good amount of points here. Can Boise State keep up? They really shut down the UNLV offense last year. It's a completely different staff and team and all that. But Boise's been in this position before. 4.5 point favorites. I don't know. What do you think?
I like Boise here. Last year was a banger. Last year, the winner went to the playoff, right? I think if UNLV won, they would have gone. So, Boise plays some defense. UNLV does not. Well, I don't know what the Boise team total is, but if I could make a bet this weekend, that's what I would take. They're going to score some points and win this game. UNLV will score some points, but not as many. Give me Boise.
I'm going to take UNLV here just to be different. I think Dan Mullen's done a really good job this year. They're going to give up a lot of points, but Maddox Madsen's hurt. Boise hasn't been great the last month. UNLV, they're a fun team. Just to be different, I'm going to go UNLV. Conference USA, Kennesaw State at Jacksonville State, 7 o'clock Eastern, Friday, CBS Sports Network. These teams played earlier in the year. Jacksonville State won 35-26. Jacksonville State is led by running back Cam Cook. Remember that name? Formerly at TCU. Yep. Was he a 5-star recruit back in the day? I don't remember. But highly touted back in the day. He's got almost 1,600 rushing yards this year for first-year coach Charles Kelly. They beat Western Kentucky last year to get into this game. Kennesaw State, led by first-year coach Jerry Mack. Coming off of, I think, a 1-11 or 2-10 team. He's transitioned them out of the triple option. And you got quarterback Amari Odom has been really solid, 9.5 yards per attempt. Kennesaw State favored in this game, 2.5 on the road at Jacksonville State. Thoughts?
Matchup of former Tennessee assistants, Jerry Mack under Josh Heupel, Charles Kelly, defensive coordinator under Jeremy Pruitt. Charles Kelly, also defensive coordinator for a bit under Deion Sanders. He's done a really nice job this year. I think people were kind of not sure what to make of him coming from Auburn and taking this gig. They've been great, but I think Kennesaw gets this. The Owls take care of business at Jacksonville State, get the win.
I'm going to go Jacksonville State. I think at home, I like that rushing attack. They get it done. They're also undefeated in Conference USA. In the MAC, Miami of Ohio versus Western Michigan, noon Eastern, Saturday, ESPN, the only Saturday G5 game. These two teams, guess what, played each other earlier in the year. Miami beat Western Michigan 26-17. That was the only MAC loss for Western Michigan all year. They have won 4 straight. They have been really the best team in the MAC, led by quarterback Brock Lowry. He's got 1,500 passing yards, almost 900 rushing yards, 21 total touchdowns. Miami, you might remember they added DeQuan Finn, formerly
He's
quarterback.
Been kind of all over the place this year.
Formerly of Toledo, formerly of Baylor. He came back to the MAC, was a starter when the season started. He left the team a few weeks ago in a very bizarre situation. Not a ton of details on it, but freshman Thomas Gatkowski has taken over. Looked pretty good in their last game. I think it was his first start. Miami we got an email about the tiebreakers here. We'll get to it in a second, but Miami being in this position is a little bit weird. I'm going to go Western Michigan, 2.5 point favorite. I think the Broncos have been the best team in the MAC. I think they get it done.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's not a real sharp analysis here, but yes, Western Michigan been the best team in these championship games. I'm leaning into them. Same reason for Ohio State.
So an email here from Ryan Neal, who said, "Hey, David and Chris, I'm here mostly to complain about Ohio and Toledo getting left out of the MAC championship game in place of Miami of Ohio based on common opponent winning percentage." So there was a 3-way tie is what it was between Toledo, Miami, and Ohio. He says, "My main gripe, which has been stated on your show, is that Miami went 0-2 against Toledo and Ohio, which should have been the first tiebreaker. Common opponent win percentage should be like the 4th or 5th. I agree with Chris and some of the other conferences that national rankings should be applied earlier as a tiebreaker as well. I think it's kind of garbage how the MAC tiebreakers were designed. Nobody really believes that Miami of Ohio or Duke are the best to represent their conference in a nationally televised game. If either win, nobody will believe they're actually the best team in their league." Yeah, that is unusual. Miami was 0-2 against the other two teams they were tied with, but that wasn't enough. They still got in the game. The other thing, by the way, Ohio, we didn't mention this. Head coach Brian Smith on a leave of absence. The school would not say why. The school has not responded to various questions we have had. We are looking into it, trying to figure out some details, but strange situation for Brian Smith, first-year coach there at Ohio. We'll have more on The Athletic as we know about it. All right. It's been a long episode. but I've had some
Real
fun.
quick though, Chris,
yeah.
I have a proposal.
Yeah.
The committee only ranked 25 teams. What if the MAC and all the other schools just installed a tiebreaker? That's if there's a tiebreaker, it's whoever's highest in the athletic 136.
I like that idea. I think I had Ohio. I think I had Ohio as my second highest MAC team with Toledo behind them. So apologies to the Bobcats. So, all right, time to end the show the way we always do, and that is by remembering some guys.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
I'm going to go to Indiana. I'm going to go former Hoosiers quarterback Xander Diamant, quarterback from 2014 to 2016. He had a 79-yard touchdown run against Ohio State in 2015, one of several games in which Indiana almost knocked off the Buckeyes, but didn't get it done. Indiana led that game late in the third quarter, couldn't hold on. The losing streak continued. He also went viral in, I think, 2014 when they beat Purdue, and he's in the locker room holding the old oaken bucket with a cigar, and he's like a good-looking dude. Do you remember when this picture went viral, like 10 years ago?
I don't remember this at all.
Like Adam Sandler shouted it out, several celebrities, because it like went viral because he was a really handsome guy and all the girls were interested in stuff. It was pretty. Xander retired due to concussions and kind of spoke out a bit about player treatment stuff, which was interesting. But yeah, one of the better looking Big Ten quarterbacks in history. Xander Diamant almost beat Ohio State in 2015. That's my guy.
Because I'm watching Duke football in person, I believe for the first time this week, I went with Thaddeus Lewis, 4-year starter at quarterback from 2006 to 2009. A mixed bag of results, but a fun player. I was looking through the history of Duke football, and I got to be honest, I did not remember a lot of the guys. So, Thad Lewis, I do remember you. So.
There you go. We got a lot of nominations that are stacked up. I've seen your emails. We will continually get to them. Going to go with Daniel Lassiter here, who says, love the podcast. I've already recommended it to all my college football fan friends. Here is my remembering some dudes submission. Eric Rhett, Florida, 1990 to 1993. People were in awe of the way Spurrier was throwing the ball around the SEC in the early 90s, but they overlooked the absolute beast that was running back Eric Rhett. He had a decent NFL career. He was awesome in college. I got to admit, I was unaware of him until reading the submission.
You remember him? I don't have a lot of recollection of him as a player. I know the name, but I that was a little before my day. I would have been like 3 to 6 when he played. So
yeah,
I was
growing up
in college football at that point.
Yeah, and I was in Big Ten country at the time. So, but that's the point of this. Presumably, many of our listeners do remember Eric Rhett, and so for Eric Rhett, Xander Diamant, and Thaddeus Lewis, we remember you. Reminder: we will not be live Saturday night. Most likely, I might try it myself, but most likely not. We will not be live on Sunday either. Too much work going on. Thank you to everybody again for the Spotify Wraps. If you have those, please send them to us. We love to see them. Please tell your friends. It's been fun to watch the show grow. The last episode we did, by the way, is probably going to end up being a top 5 episode in the show's history in terms of listenership. So it's continuing to grow. It's been a lot of fun. We've got a sponsor that's on once a week. So we appreciate everybody for listening to this show. We just started ourselves earlier this year. It's been a lot of fun. Big weekend, big drama coming up on Sunday. I can't wait to get mad about it all. So thank you for listening. For David Ubben, I'm Chris Vannini. Thank you for listening to Bunch Formation, and we will talk to you on Monday. David,
and bring back the turnover chain, please.
Thank you. We cannot forget that. I know that Miami is being forgotten about by the College Football Playoff Committee, but we do not forget.
Nobody's talking about him, right? Yeah.